trying to be as fast as possible, or Electrolab to slow everything down. Like, what does Adrien have to worry about seeing Regieleki, Whimsicott, and Didi, like some really intense Pokemon on the other side?
Yeah, there's so much offense, right? So I think like one of Adrien's goals might be to just try to get up Trick Room, right? Porygon 2 is actually decently effective for that because Calyrex can't actually do very much damage into it. One thing I'm curious about is actually Carson's Regieleki set. Like, we have seen Assurance to turn into Max Darkness, lowering your opponent's special defense, and that allows Kyogre to take advantage of that. And given that Carson's running dual special attackers for his restricted Pokemon, that would be really interesting. But basically, I think like Adrien's goal here ideally is to set up Trick Room, but you do have to worry about things like Switcheroo Eject Button from Whimsicott, Taunt from Whimsicott, as well as Imprison or Trick Room on Calyrex Shadow Rider. And you know, if you look at Adrien's team, like both of the restricteds don't really take Water Spout or Astral Barrage super well, so you gotta be careful about that. I'm mainly curious in what Pokemon Carson wants to Dynamax here, because Landorus, Calyrex, Lucky, and Kyogre can all be max options, and a lot of it will be dependent on kind of the item choices on each one. So I think Carson's goal, ideally, deny Trick Room. Adrien's goal, get up Trick Room.
And that's the clash of Pokemon that we really love to see in VGC, is you have your win condition, I have mine. The way I win is making sure you don't set up yours.
Exactly.
I am excited for Urshifu on Adrien's side, because it's definitely a Pokemon that's a lot more prevalent in the trading card game at the moment. Maybe we go back to Series 5, 6, 7, where Urshifu was really dominant. Those guaranteed critical hits on Wicked Blow, breaking through Protect, it's a lot of offensive pressure. And if you weren't prepared to see an Urshifu or Reshiram in the spot, it can really blow you back.
Yeah, Porygon Amoonguss here, that is actually going to be one of the most consistent leads typically to get Trick Room up, because you can just go for a Rage Powder here. But the Whimsicott on Kyogre is interesting because we don't know the Whimsicott set, right? If you are Switcheroo plus Eject Button, you can actually just eject the Porygon out. You can also just Taunt it here. The nice thing is that Whimsicott is Grass type, so it doesn't have to care about Amoonguss, right? But the thing you do have to watch out for is a Spore from Amoonguss onto Kyogre. Adrien on turn 1 could just angle for a Trick Room and a Spore immediately.
Carson does not want to get Spored on this turn, so instead will play it safe, will opt for a Protect in case the Spore goes into that slot. Taunt into Porygon 2, so now Porygon cannot use any non-attacking moves for the next couple of turns, and because of the Taunt revealed by Whimsicott, he is not able to set up Trick Room here, so really a perfect turn 1 for Carson.
Yeah, now you can launch Taunt into Amoonguss on turn 2, so then one of the other questions I have is it Mental Orb Amoonguss? Because if you are, that can actually set Carson back a huge amount. I think Carson's team aims to just like make sure that your opponent can't attack, and there are other potential combos here, like something like Fake Tears into Ice Beam or a Max Hailstorm, but Amoonguss recognizing, hey, maybe Taunt's coming my way, and let me burn a turn of sleep.
Yeah, Protect from the Amoonguss on this turn, and correctly predicting Carson to Taunt that slot. Water Spout will connect on to the Porygon 2. He is full HP, but it's not super effective. Porygon brought down to essentially 50% of its HP, so as long as Kyogre doesn't lose any HP, it would knock it out. But unfortunately for Carson, now that its HP has been lowered, the base power of Water Spout has been lowered as well.
Yeah, so Amoonguss going for the Protector makes me think it doesn't have Mentor, but if you don't, this is really awkward because you can just go Taunt Water Spout. So then the other question I have is, what is the offensive attack on Amoonguss? Do you actually have like a powerful Grass type attack? Often you'll see like Pollen Puff on teams like this, and so that's not very effective. Like you called out, the chip damage on Kyogre is actually very essential, and we're actually going to see a Dynamax here, so I think Carson may be trying to go all in on knocking out Amoonguss rather than, risking a potential Mental Orb here, because you still don't know. You could also target the Porygon slot and just go for a Taunt onto Amoonguss, but part of me wonders, does Carson know the item of Amoonguss? Because I would be scared of Mental Orb or, Focus Sash.
And at this point, you could also find out if it is holding Focus Sash if you bring it down to 1 HP with a Max Hailstorm potentially. But on this turn, Whimsicott will Taunt that the Amoonguss slot again, and now Max Geyser, because of the rain being up, this is going to boost the damage, and if Water Spout wasn't going to get the KO before, Max Geyser certainly will in the rain, so Porygon 2 goes down on this matchup. Surprised never to see Porygon switch out since it was taunted. Had to go for foul plays because it couldn't Trick Room there. So I was a little surprised to just let the Porygon sit on the field for a couple turns.
I think the problem with Adrien, or the problem for Adrien there, is that there's no safe switch-in into a near full-powered Water Spout. You don't really want to bring Reshiram or Calyrex Ice Rider, and so part of the goal with the team is to get up Trick Room, right? So that is one turn of Dynamax actually committed on Kyogre. I think Carson just wanting to guarantee the knockout onto Porygon there. and also not knowing, the attack on Amoonguss in that position. But, you do end up now committing a turn of Dynamax to knock out something that's not a huge offensive threat. So Amoonguss in the end is not Mentor, which is also a big deal. Taunt is so valuable here. Whimsicott now can just launch a taunt into the Calyrex Ice Rider slot. So if you're Adrien, you could make the decision to instead just Dynamax it, go for a Max Hailstorm, and try to KO the Whimsicott. The problem is, now that Porygon is out of the way, how do you actually beat Calyrex Shadow Rider in the late game, right? And so I think Adrien's answer is, let me at least stall out Trick Room, or there's Fake Tears. Let me stall out Dynamax first, and that's a great protect on Calyrex.
Yeah, a great call from Adrien there is that would have really hurt it a lot, lowering its special defense by 2 stages, but instead it stays at normal stage for special defense, and the protect helps it not take too much damage there from the Max Geyser. Foul play from Amoonguss into Whimsicott doesn't do much damage, but importantly, if the Whimsicott is holding a Focus Sash, that is now broken for Adrien's next attack, maybe the Max Hailstorm to knock it out.
Yeah, Carson here this next turn I think has a very safe play. It's just doubling up into Calyrex with Fake Tears and Max Geyser. Amoonguss is still taunted here, and so you'll get a knockout onto Calyrex, or I guess Calyrex could Dynamax here, but the thing is, as soon as you Dynamax, you're not getting Trick Room up. So he goes for the double protect, which I actually think is absolutely the best option here, but does not get it. Whimsicott is going to get the Fake Tears off here, and so Geyser here will just be a knockout, and that means no Trick Room potential in this game with both Trick Room users getting knocked out.
Adrien had a 30% chance of the turn really working out well for them, and it's better to have a 30% chance than a 0% chance and just get knocked out to Fake Tears Max Geyser. So this foul play is going to bring Kyogre down to around half of its HP. The rain stops. But I respect the play from Adrien's end, because, it's either you just get knocked out or you do have that chance. If you protect, Kyogre is out of Dynamax turns, and then you can try to be on the advantage. So I respect the decision.
For sure. And I think Adrien actually still has a fine chance of winning this game, especially if you're Assault Vest on Reshiram. I'm not sure what the item is on it, but for example, Carson's team is really designed to try to pick up as many knockouts as possible, as quickly as possible. So now that Taunt is worn off, you can bring out Reshiram, protect Amoonguss, Dynamax Reshiram, and then Max Flare to KO the Whimsicott. And if Taunt doesn't go off, suddenly Amoonguss with Spore Pressure is a lot scarier, right? So part of my question is, who does Carson have in the back? I think Regieleki contributes very little into the matchup, but if you've got both the Indeedee and the Calyrex Shadow Rider, that's just double expanding force, which is really scary to deal with. Kyogre obviously still upright here as well, but I think the main thing is potential Spore Pressure from Amoonguss if you can get the knockout onto Whimsicott. But I think Whimsicott here can go for a Fake Tears on the way out, and that's also a really big deal given the number of special attackers that are on Adrien's side. So this turn, I'm curious, does Carson go for the taunt onto Amoonguss, or does he go for a Fake Tears onto Reshiram instead?
4-2 Pokemon count right now in Carson's favor, so he hasn't even had to reveal his 2 Pokemon in the back, because that's how effective Whimsicott and Kyogre was a lead for him in this matchup. Dynamaxed Reshiram, though, which is really exciting to see. It's a hyper-offensive Pokemon that can really output a lot of damage, especially when it's Dynamaxed. This Water Spout does not do too much damage to the Reshiram. It is a neutral attack after all, and has its HP lowered, so wouldn't expect it to do much. And then the Max Flare does knock out Whimsicott and will set up the Sun, so that now the next Max Flare is going to be even stronger next turn.
Yeah, I'm mainly curious on the item choices on this team, because there are 4 Pokemon that typically run Focus Sash: Whimsicott, Calyrex, Aleki, and Indeedee. Only one of those could run Sash, right? And so Whimsicott there also didn't have an Eject button, which is one of the other common options. You sometimes could, of course, run something like a Mentor, but generally here, Whimsicott now, if you don't have Sash on the Pokemon in the back, and it was Whimsicott with the Sash, you do risk just getting one hit KO'd by the Reshiram right now. So Calyrex comes out with the Amoonguss taunted. If you do have Indeedee as your final one, you can pivot Kyogre out into Indeedee and just go for an expanding force there. Adrien did not go for a potential protector on Amoonguss. Sometimes Amoonguss don't actually carry protect, because you want, Rage Powder, Spore. This one has Foul Play, and then you can run like Pollen Puff. So I wonder if Adrien had protector, or maybe reading into a potential Fake Tears play. But there is going to be the switch, and it is Indeedee as the last one.
So now Carson has revealed all 4 of his Pokemon he brought here into Game 1, thanks to the Indeedee female. Kyogre switching out in that spot, mainly to keep it around, but also mainly so that it can reset the rain later on in this matchup. Indeedee holding its Psychic Seed, which is very common if it's not Focus Sash, to increase its special defense by a stage, and then the Psychic attack will take out Amoonguss because it is super effective, and still really bulky Reshiram there by 2 strong hits from 2 restricted, and it's still not even at half of its HP. Max Quake from Reshiram on this turn into the Calyrex, brings it down to pretty much half of its HP and gets a special defense boost.
Yeah, the boost is nice, but it's too late for the Reshiram in my opinion. Like, it looks like it's the Assault Vest set, which is pretty common, but your damage output just isn't there. So now NDD can just go for a Follow Me, Calyrex and Expanding Force, and then go for another Follow Me, Expanding Force, and then Kyogre just comes out, uses its attacks as well. So it's going to be pretty difficult for Reshiram to win this endgame, I think, especially with the special defense boost on NDD. Reshiram now does have a special defense boost of its own, but I just don't think it outputs enough damage. And the main problem in this game for Adrien was that his Pokemon were just slower, right? And Taunt Whimsicott was just an absolute nightmare to deal with. So we'll see, you know, if Carson can actually close out the game, but I think he just has such a big lead now that I'm sure both players are kind of thinking about game plans going into the subsequent game.
Follow Me,
that's a
Expanding
crit,
Force.
right?
There you go.
That's not even a crit.
That's not a crit. This Max Flare is in the sun, though, so NDD will not be brought down to its potential 1 HP there. We do know it is holding the Psychic Seed, so that's why it was able to hang on from a Max Flare in the sun from Reshiram. That's really hard, but thanks to the Psychic Seed, it hung on there, and it's a 4-1 count right now. So Carson's going to be winning this game and trying to continue the undefeated streak here in round 6.
Yeah, one thing I had forgotten about was actually the boost from knocking out Amoonguss, and so dealing more damage there, even with the special defense boost into a Dynamax. You know, it was a single target Expanding Force there. And I'm also curious about the item on Calyrex Shadow Rider there. I wonder if it is actually something like a Choice Specs, for example. That's actually incredibly powerful on this team composition. That would also make a lot of sense to me. And so I think the way Carson maneuvered that game was fantastic. And now if you're Adrien, you're like, okay, I know there's Taunt on the Whimsicott. I know you're not Switcheroo Eject button. And, you know, the Calyrex, like, if you're not leading it, you can't really deny Trick Room, right? And so the question is basically, how do you get around the Taunt Whimsicott on turn 1 as well as the Kyogre combination? I think what's also really scary is that you got to deal with Fake Tears as well, right? So one thing I'm thinking about is Amoonguss is really valuable, but only after you knock out the Whimsicott. And then the other question is, how can you get Trick Room up safely, right? Grimmsnarl can at least maybe set up screens, but it's really difficult. This Whimsicott Kyogre lead is just incredibly efficient for Carson. I think what Adrien wants to do ideally is get Reshiram out a little bit earlier, because Reshiram actually looked really good in that end game. The problem for it is that it, you know, just doesn't deal enough damage. And if you have Trick Room up, okay, then it works out a little bit better. But it's just going to be really difficult for Adrien to set up Trick Room against this Whimsicott Kyogre lead.
And it was tanking those attacks very well, but if you're going to get hit by the Whimsicott every turn from the Fake Tears and lowering your special defense, then those Origin or Water Spouts are really going to start adding up. I wonder, can Urshifu even play a role in this matchup? It's pretty rough against
tough
Whimsicott,
against the lead, yeah.
But it's nice into Shadow Rider, right? So also crit Wicked Blows are going to make sure Kyogre's Water Spouts are going to do significantly less damage. Like, can he try to get Urshifu to work at all in game 2?
I want to see Porygon Calyrex Ice Rider as the lead, because that's dual Trick Room pressure. Now, it's not easy because...
And he can't taunt both.
Yeah, exactly. So you play the Mind Game instead, right? But it's actually Grimmsnarl Reshiram. So I think Adrien recognizing, okay, it's going to be really difficult to set up Trick Room. I actually like this lead combo a lot as well, because now it's like, okay, Reshiram doesn't have Trick Room up, but it is pretty bulky. The scary thing here is just worrying about Fake Tears, right? But Grimmsnarl adds a new level of variance, because as of right now, Carson doesn't exactly know what set this Grimmsnarl is, right? So you got to be worried about a lot of different item choices, something like a switch or trick, I should say, into Iron Ball. Maybe it's just light play dual screens. So one of the first questions is, you know, from Carson's end, you just go for something like a Fake Tears into a Water Spout immediately, or you could Dynamax Kyogre. And then from Adrien's end, what is Grimmsnarl going to do? Are you just going to start the game off with Light Screen?
The Grimmsnarl is a really nice adjustment as Carson Dynamaxes his Kyogre on turn 1, because one, it can't get taunted, you can't prankster a Dark type, so that's a nice adjustment there. And your Light Screen will somewhat negate the Fake Tears from Whimsicott. Not fully, because it'll eventually start adding up more than a Light Screen is going to protect you from. But Adrien is realizing that his best chance and his most successful turns in game 1 were with the Dynamax Reshiram, so why not come out on turn 1 here, Dynamax right against this Kyogre. We saw it really did not do too much damage to it, even with the Max Geyser in the rain on that turn. So two Dynamax legendaries going at it, and Grimmsnarl will have the light screen setting up on its side, lowering the damage from special attacks for the next 5 to 8 turns, depending on the item it's holding. I was noticing that Prankster Grimmsnarl went before Prankster Whimsicott, and that's because you went for a Moonblast, did not go for a Prankster move there. The Max guys are into Grimmsnarl, double targeting Grimmsnarl. All it gets to do is light screen this game, or on this turn, and now it's been knocked out. But Reshiram is still at full HP. Max Flare into the Whimsicott in the rain is going to bring it down to its Focus Sash.
Does confirm the Focus Sash item, which makes sense. You know, we already saw the Psychic Seed on Indy, and so, yeah, I think the decent trade-off for both players. So I think the thing here is that Adrien recognizes, hey, it's actually really difficult for Carson to reliably knock out Reshiram early on. Even in that end game, like, Carson was able to handle it because, like, Adrian's partner Pokemon next to Reshiram was effectively useless. This time around, you know, you trade Grimmsnarl. Now Calyrex Ice Rider comes out. One question I have here is, with the sun being up, does a Fake Tears Geyser actually KO the Calyrex Ice Rider? And then the other thing you could do is obviously just protect Calyrex if you're worried about taking a hit there. So Whimsicott here could go for Taunt onto Calyrex if you're really worried about Trick Room. You could go for Fake Tears Geyser if you're confident in KOing Calyrex, although I'm not sure I would be. And Calyrex, yeah, goes for the Protect here because the worst case that Carson could have gone for was Fake Tears and Geyser until a Reshiram slot, and there's Taunt to try to deny Trick Room. So yeah, great adjustment.
Taunt goes into the Protect, so it does not work on this turn. And Max Geyser will be able to reset the rain up on this turn into Reshiram, but because the sun being up, that just really did, I think it did like 20-something damage to the Reshiram, so it's not too much of an issue on this turn. Now it's up to Reshiram with Max Quake. Is it going to go into the 1 HP on the Whimsicott to get the buff? Yes, that is what it does. He doesn't care about damage from Max Quake. He cares about getting the special defense buffs on Reshiram and the Calyrex. And now with the Whimsicott gone, you can't Fake Tears anymore. I did want to note that Carson kind of pinned himself on that turn by Dynamaxing Kyogre turn 1, because once Reshiram set up the sun, now you can't switch out because you can't waste your Dynamax turns.
Absolutely. So Calyrex comes out now, and it looked like choice specs in game 1 based off that damage output, because I'm pretty sure Reshiram is assault vested. And so now what you can do is Astral Barrage and just Geyser into the Calyrex slot. What'll be really interesting here is if Adrien actually brought Porygon 2 in the back. You could also just give up Calyrex Ice Rider and play towards like a Porygon 2 Reshiram endgame, but the advantage of Porygon 2 is that it is completely immune to the Astral Barrages right now. And so I expect Calyrex to go for an Astral Barrage here. The question is, does Kyogre want a Geyser into Reshiram or into Calyrex? As you see, Adrien made a great adjustment, recognizing, hey, it's actually pretty difficult for you to deal damage in a Reshiram, especially because your team is almost entirely special, and Lander's T would be the adjustment to make in a potential game 3 for Carson here to get maybe physical damage onto it. So Calyrex is going to make the switch, and let's see what it is.
Staying at full HP, switching out into Porygon 2, so we're going to find out. Porygon is the normal type wall that was really meant for this team for the Astral Barrage, and it is immune to that attack. It will hit Reshiram with a critical hit, so we still actually can't confirm the item, but that is a lot of damage there. And then Max Geyser now into the Porygon 2 switch in, brings it down to half its HP there. So Adrien deciding to save Calyrex from that damage, and a Max Flare again onto Calyrex, Shadow Rider onto Carson's side. And importantly, even with that critical hit, will set up the rain, or the sun, excuse me, yet again, as both of these Pokemon have used up their Dynamax turns.
I think this is a really great adjustment by Adrien, recognizing I don't necessarily need to get Trick Room up because Carson's team is actually really weak to AV Reshiram. Yes, you have Fake Tears, but in this game, one thing that was huge was Carson didn't opt to Fake Tears the Reshiram, instead targeting the Calyrex with Taunt that turn, and so Adrien basically played perfectly around the Whimsicott in the early game. Now you're in a position where, yeah, like, Kyogre can switch, sure, but can you actually knock out both Pokemon this turn with the Calyrex, right? Because if Porygon sets up Trick Room here, it feels like Adrien should just win the game. So it's all about whether or not you can deny Trick Room this turn with the Calyrex Shadow Rider.
It's also nice that Grimmsnarl, you know, from the back, supporting the team, only had the one turn, but the light screens are still up. So that's why it's been taking such little damage, because one is, you know, has the Assault Vest and then also has the Max Quake boost and the light screen there. So that is... does not do a lot, really. And then the Heat Wave missing Calyrex does connect onto Indeedee, but Indeedee does have a special defense boost, so it doesn't do a lot. Trick Room finally going up for Adrien here in game 2, and this is the win condition, you know, position Adrien was looking for this whole time.
Absolutely, and I think the fact that Calyrex, you know, continue to go for an Astral Barrage there rather than expanding force really indicates to me, I'm like, 99.9% sure it's choice specs at this point, given all the damage that we've seen. So now you can consider switching into Kyogre. It looks like Carson's going to go for sacrificing Calyrex. Makes sense because Calyrex is so bad under Trick Room anyway. This is a great recover by Adrien because you're not at risk of taking too much damage at this point. And yeah, it's basically a question of whether or not Kyogre has enough steam at this point to win under Trick Room. It is going to be able to tank a couple of attacks, so that is the upside for it. So I think Protect Unity also the correct play there, but with Trick Room going up from Adrien and once again that early light screen going up, it's just provided so much value because Carson's team is so reliant on special attacks.
Yeah, that Heat Wave knocks it out. Carson down to his final 2 Pokemon here in Game 2. Having to bring back Kyogre. It is at full health, so that is beneficial for Carson, and it will reactivate its Drizzle ability, setting up the rain and boosting water attacks for the next 5 turns. So the Porygon, it was able to recover on that last one to go back up to full HP, and we saw the Kyogre before was not doing enough damage to knock it out, so it still is in a very favorable position for Adrien.
Yeah, although I will say Kyogre is actually really powerful here thanks to the lack of like good spread type attacks. Like Follow Me Water Spout here is actually really safe, and so Kyogre here could mount a comeback, right? So we'll see if a double up here with Foul Play and an attack from Reshiram even KOs Indeedee. If you go for like a Draco Meteor, maybe that's enough, and there is the Draco Meteor.
There it is,
so
90% accurate, and it does connect onto the Indeedee. It's brought down to like 40% of its HP, so it is going to knock it out. But unfortunately for Adrien, it's going to lower Reshiram's special attack by 2 stages. I think he's totally okay with that at this point because Reshiram has done more than enough work in this matchup, as it will be knocked out from the Water Spout on Kyogre's end. It is down. Calyrex, Ice Rider comes back in. Importantly, while Trick Room is still up and is still at full HP, it is still at full HP.
Yeah, so I'm curious about the Calyrex moveset here. You occasionally see Seed Bomb. So if you have Seed Bomb here, the damage up and into Kyogre is obviously incredible. If you are just classic Glacial Lance, high horsepower, Trick Room Protect, it's actually kind of awkward, right? Because it's like suddenly your best offense is, you know, clicking Glacial Lance or high horsepower obviously being slightly inaccurate, Glacial Lance being single target here. Now Kyogre, as you can see, is not very bulky given its HP stat. I'm also curious if Porygon has Eerie Impulse here, because that would be really powerful. The last thing to note, as it just goes for recover, is if Calyrex has Trick Room and you expect Kyogre to protect next turn, you can click Trick Room with both Pokemon to reset a full another 4 turns of Trick Room, and it is just high horsepower coming out to start.
It does connect onto Kyogre, brings it down to around 60% of its HP, and that's why you have to go for Origin Pulse, because you have the lowered HP. Missing out on Porygon 2, but crucially still connecting on to Calyrex, brings it down to under half of its HP. So another Origin Pulse would knock it out, but at this point, Kyogre has no access to recovering its HP, while Porygon can keep recovering.
Yeah, so here, the double Trick Room play would be fancy, but I think the better route is probably to just... Oh, there's the Eerie Impulse! There it is! Okay. Yeah, if you have that, then that's the best play by far.
Yep, Eerie Impulse from Porygon 2 into the Kyogre, saving that reveal for Game 2, not using it in Game 1 because he was taunted, so he wasn't able to. And then now this Origin Pulse does connect onto both of Adrien's Pokemon, but because of the Eerie Impulse, so special attack stat has been, you know, severely taken down on Carson's end. Trick Room does end in this spot, but with just 11 HP remaining on the Kyogre, Adrien has pretty much locked up this Game 2.
Yeah, I think your only win con is an Origin Pulse double critical hit right now, so still not 100% over, but I like Adrien's play there because even if Kyogre protects the next turn, you could just protect Trick Room with Porygon, right? So Kyogre's going to need 2 critical hits here, even with the crit. I don't know if it KOs Porygon, so he is going to connect on this one, but if no critical comes out, that's going to be game over.
Well, we're going to have to see. Porygon hardly takes any damage there, so we can obviously see that there was no critical hit in that, and now Adrien is able to set up Trick Room for a second time in this game. So now with the slower Pokemon, they will be moving faster under Trick Room and can take care of that pesky 11 HP.
Yep, and so I think Adrien approached this perfectly in terms of the adjustments, right? Part of it was we didn't know what Grimmsnarl said it would be, but the fact that it is just the light screen in itself combined with AV Reshiram is an incredible duo. So going into Game 3 then, you gotta wonder if you're Carson. Maybe you don't lead Whimsicott. Maybe you keep that in the back for taunt pressure. Maybe you don't even bring it at all because you think, okay, I don't really need taunt as much, and I'm just going to try to overwhelm my opponent with offense, right? So I really like how Adrien adjusted there, and to me, one of the big question marks is, can Carson consider Landorus Therian for it? We haven't seen it up until now. I don't know the item on it, but Landorus could, especially for like Assault Vest, for example, or Life Orb, both of those do huge amounts of damage into the Reshiram on turn 1, right? Force the Grimmsnarl to only go for one of Light Screen and Reflect. Don't let it get both off, and also pressure Reshiram, because as you can see, Adrien's team actually doesn't have a ground resistance or immunity, and so if you do catch the Grimmsnarl Reshiram lead once again, Lando can apply a ton of pressure immediately.
That's an interesting point with Landorus, because Reshiram was so strong in game 2 that it kind of baits a switch into it, but then are you really gonna not bring Whimsicott when it was so effective for you in game 1? That's why it's so difficult. I really don't envy these trainers when they have to make these decisions. Like, Whimsicott was critical in game 1 to your team's success and your strategy, and then it was really just a complete hindrance to you. So now that ultimate decision of what do you do, Whimsicott, or do you break out Lando in game 3? These are why these are the best players in the region, and they're both 5-0 at this point at the regional.
Yeah, and for Adrien, like, if you're expecting that lead, maybe just don't lead Reshiram immediately, right? You could go with the Grimmsnarl, and like even Calyrex Ice Rider early could be scary, or you could play a little bit more passively, something like Grimmsnarl Porygon with Reshiram and Calyrex in the back. I think the fear with Grimmsnarl Porygon is if you run into the Whimsicott lead once again and Carson just goes with the same Pokemon, then Taunt suddenly becomes so much more of an issue, right? And I think the other thing for Carson is considering how to best maximize his Dynamax. Basically, like how we've seen the dynamic of this matchup play out is how much value do you get out of Kyogre versus Reshiram? In that in this like previous game, Reshiram looked really good, right? Because the thing is that it's basically impossible to KO it while it's Dynamax, given the Pokemon that Carson's bringing. That's why Landorus would be the adjustment. Carson could have also opted for maybe a Fake Tears or two onto Reshiram throughout that game, but to be honest, even with the Fake Tears, this AV Reshiram with Light Screen is just so bulky that it just doesn't get KO'd, right? And so Carson has to either apply more pressure to Reshiram early or knock out all the Pokemon around Reshiram a little bit quicker, but when Adrien has Protect on multiple of these Pokemon, it's a little bit difficult to actually accomplish that.
I really do like your idea for Carson of leading Landorus and Kyogre, because then you are forcing the Grimmsnarl to choose one and saying, you're getting knocked out this turn. You either get a Light Screen up and you stop some special attacks, or you get a Reflect up and you stop the Landorus, who might be your potential biggest threat for your Reshiram to sweep. And so I think that would be a really nice aggressive play out of Carson to really force Adrien's hand into saying, I get one turn with the Grimmsnarl before it's knocked out. What type of damage do I try to mitigate?
Exactly, yeah. And so this is such a tough situation, right? Because if you're Carson, you're like, okay, I really need to bring Landorus to bring out Reshiram, and then maybe Adrien's like, okay, I deviate from Reshiram. But wow, it's actually just going to be Grimmsnarl, Reshiram, and Whimsicott Kyogre again. So Carson willing to stick with the original lead here. Now what's interesting is maybe you don't Dynamax the Kyogre immediately. Maybe you have Landorus T in the back, right? Because the problem in that game felt like Kyogre's Dynamax didn't get too much value, because it's like, okay, you KO the Grimmsnarl on turn 1, but where do you go from there? Like, instead of Dynamaxing here, maybe you just go Moonblast Water Spout instead, right? Conserve your Dynamax, and if you do indeed have the Landorus T in the back over Indeedee, for example, then I think it has a lot of late game sweeping potential. So yeah, here, like, you could just go for Moonblast on a Grimmsnarl and Water Spout on turn 1. You could Dynamax Kyogre again, but I don't think that is a super strong path. I mean, I guess you could Fake Tears and Geyser into Reshiram, but even then, it feels kind of weak. And as you can see, this time around, Carson is not going to Dynamax.
And there's no switches either here in Game 3 from Adrien or Carson. So Adrien will Dynamax the Reshiram just like he did in Game 2. It's now up to Grimmsnarl, likely going to protect or click Light Screen and then help its special defense stat for the next 8 turns here. The benefit of Grimmsnarl is it cannot be prankstered because it is a dark type. So instead, the Fake Tears will go into the Reshiram and saying, before you get up Light Screen, before you get your max Quake boost, I'm going to lower the special defense to kind of neutralize the Light Screen in this matchup. Water Spout from the Kyogre brings Grimmsnarl down low, but not enough for a KO. And then Max Flare into Whimsicott is going to bring it back down to the Focus Sash, just like we saw in the last game. So the adjustment from Carson, last time around, he went for the double attack. He went for Dynamax and Moonblast into that. He's left himself a lot more open potentially to who his Dynamax attacker can be in this game.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think like what's interesting here is Whimsicott can actually just go for another Fake Tears on a Reshiram. That was actually really significant damage, right? And so you'll take those. And so Carson actually willing to Dynamax now, saying, okay, well, because I got so much damage onto you on turn 1 this time around, I can use the Calyrex Shadow Rider a little bit more effectively in the end game, right? So I think it's really hard to feel comfortable bringing Lander T into the matchup. That was an adjustment we were talking about. But you are staring down a Calyrex Ice Rider as well as Trick Room, and so Carson is saying, okay, I'm willing to just switch it up a little bit here. And so it's a second fake tiers now onto the Reshiram, -4 special defense, and you have the speed advantage. And so, yeah, I think this is a great adjustment, and I love the decision to not Dynamax on turn 1.
Sucker Punch from Grimmsnarl into Kyogre. Understanding Grimmsnarl, its job, it's done. It can't really do much else in this matchup, so gonna take a little bit of HP away, and the more HP you take down from Kyogre, the less and less those water spouts do in this, for the rest of the game. But Max Quake, just like we saw in Game 2, the Max Quake comes out on turn 2 to take care of Whimsicott, and now you lost that Moonblast. You lost that, attack, or, you're gonna have to use something else. Indeedee can't touch the Grimmsnarl, so maybe you didn't bring Indeedee and you have Landers in the back. I was wondering if you do try to reflect with Grimmsnarl while you have it, just in case Landers is looming in the back.
Yeah, I think given Indeedee coming out here, should be Calyrex as the last one. So it makes sense. I feel like if you have Landers in the back, you're not going to Dynamax the Kyogre, and then you conserve your backs for Landers. And so Carson willing to just adjust his game plan this time around. So Indeedee is nice because it can redirect damage away from the Reshiram. And even though the special defense boost was nice, the problem is now this, the rain is up. So I think Max Geyser this time around might just actually KO the Reshiram, which is obviously going to be tough for Adrien. And so I think Adrien, if he wants to win this game, has to consider, okay, my main and really only damage output is Calyrex Ice Rider. You also have Foul Play from Porygon too, so you really need an angle to get Trick Room up right now. And so I like the decision to switch out Grimmsnarl right now because it just doesn't contribute anything right now, right? Like, yeah, you could go for Reflect, that's pretty much it. Sucker Punch is completely irrelevant. And so get Porygon out, so then the next turn you can pressure with Trick Room.
Max Geyser will be used on Carson's last turn of Dynamax here. It's -3 special defense, and it is not able to hang on. The Reshiram goes down. That Max Quake on the previous turn to raise its special defense one stage instead of Max Flare to set the sun up and take the damage away from the water attacks proves crucial in this matchup, as Porygon 2 takes that hit on the switch, and it does not do too much damage, but Adrien fortunately will get a free switch into his 4th Pokemon.
And so that's going to be Calyrex coming out. This time around, Carson has that Calyrex Shadow Rider, but it's not just locked into Astral Barrage immediately against the Porygon. It is kind of tricky, actually, with Calyrex against both Porygon and the opposing Calyrex. But the thing is, you did get the a little bit of chip damage on a Porygon. I'm curious, if Indeedee has Helping Hand here, you could just Helping Hand Max Geyser Porygon, to which then Adrien could respond by switching out Porygon into Grimmsnarl or just clicking Trick Room with the Calyrex, and there's the switch. So I really wonder if that's what we're seeing here.
Grimmsnarl is the bait on this turn. It switches into the Porygon, saying, if you're going to waste your turn of Helping Hand and Max Geyser into a 20% HP Pokemon, that is definitely your prerogative. The Max Geyser will go into the Grimmsnarl there. So now Calyrex is free to attack. He's down to the Porygon and Calyrex.
So there is the Trick Room, and this is what I was kind of alluding to when I mentioned, hey, I think it would be pretty cool for a Porygon Calyrex Ice Rider lead. The idea is that both Pokemon pressure with Trick Room, and so Carson had to call that turn correctly to deny Trick Room, does not end up getting it correctly. Now, the thing is, you're still staring down a Kyogre with Water Spout and Origin Pulse, right? And neither the Porygon nor the Calyrex can easily KO the Kyogre right now. So this turn is interesting. We know Indeedee has Helping Hand. We know Kyogre has Origin Pulse. You could just go for Helping Hand Origin Pulse, but you also have to be wary of the Eerie Impulse from Porygon 2. So then the other safe play is to just go for a Follow Me plus an Origin Pulse. And the third option is to just Protect and make sure Indeedee does not eat up Glacial Lance damage.
And sometimes the Protect is the most frustrating option because it's not what you're expecting compared to Follow Me and the other options. The Eerie Impulse goes into Kyogre's Protect there, so this is kind of a null turn. Carson really just seeing what is Adrien's mindset here. I'm going to double Protect and see what he values, and Light Screen does wear off here at this point.
Yeah, so Adrien did go for the, just the Eerie Impulse immediately there, so now maybe if you're Carson, you're like, okay, I'm just going to go for Follow Me, Origin Pulse, and then, go for a double Protect again. The goal is to stall out Trick Room right now, right? And so it's just going to be Follow Me, yep, and so redirect the Eerie Impulse. I wonder if Adrien reads into this and goes for a Foul Play instead this time around, and there is the Foul Play.
That's a Dark Attack, so super effective into Indeedee. Not a lot of damage because it's a special attacker, but it is nice to get every little bit of chip that you can. Glacial Lance is a spread attack onto the field, so it does have reduced damage, but it will hit both of them. It is enough to knock out Indeedee, though, because of the critical hit. You really do have to wonder what would have happened if he did not crit that attack. Now you have the Chilling Neigh boosting your attack by 1 stage, and it's all up to Kyogre with the water spout, but it's not at full HP anymore, so it does really not do too much damage to either of Adrien's Pokemon, and the rain stops.
Yeah, that's a huge critical hit. I think it depends on how both Pokemon are trained, but I actually expect Indeedee to survive in that situation, and if Indeedee survives, then you could just double protect again, stalled another turn of Trick Room, then sacrifice Indeedee, even switch out Calyrex, bring Kyogre out, reset the rain, and then Origin Pulse, right? And so the critical hit here makes things so much more difficult, because the thing is now rain is already expired, Porygon can keep healing up as well, and there's still 2 more turns of Trick Room, right? So you can actually just foul play Calyrex and Glacial Lance, and that's relatively safe. With rain no longer being around, it's actually really difficult to knock out Porygon. So it's a huge critical hit, and I really wish we could have seen how the game would have played out otherwise, but yep, there's the foul play to start against Calyrex.
It's Calyrex is not enough for a knockout. Brings it down into the red, and then Glacial Lance will be able to clean up the rest of it. Is nice to have a little moment for Crown Tundra fans as you have Calyrex Ice Rider and Calyrex Shadow Rider on the field at the same time, but a double KO for Calyrex Ice Rider. 3 knockouts in the last 2 turns for it, and Adrien has come back in this set and won, and is now moving on to 6-0 here in Indy.
Wow, that was it's like amazing, right? If you look at the way he played game 1 and game 2, and to find the Grimmsnarl Reshiram lead and to maximize that early on was really effective. I think this game 3, there were 2 major turns, right? The first one was the Porygon baiting the fake Helping Hand Geyser and calling that correctly. If you target Calyrex Ice Rider there, I think you